process of training and to get to the center of this move concept, we're going to face somebody squarely. We're not on the oblique like we like to be. We're not up and down. And traffic, dangerous traffic, is actually coming at us. Where up to now, with our feet, we have gone heel to toe. So up to now, we've done this. So up to now in our training, if there were traffic coming, we would do, we would do stuff like this. In this general way, we've talked about it a million times, of rolling heel to toe, or if we were using, or if we were darting, it really doesn't matter. But now something entirely new happens, folks. We go to the side, to the ball of the foot, not the toe, not the heel to roll onto the rest of the foot. We go to the side with the ball of the foot and instantly crank the ball around, the foot around, to an absolute max. All this time, we're sinking down on that heel, but we haven't sunk down on it until we have, within our time limits, cranked that poor ankle around to the max. We're now flat on this heel, and that heel has absolute authority. That heel is responsible for our balance. We crank then also, as a deliberate stretch, the knee. We certainly are cranking this part of the hip architecture, and the ligature and tendons in the groin. Now, the reason that we are not falling on our ass is because this is not the concept of the move. This is the waist, by just relaxing and letting us twist, does put us on one foot, but not over that foot. We're on it, not over it. The foot we've just let, the foot that pushed us, really has to push us. We really have to be inelastic. So it will, it'll push us with, and spin us at the same time. And here again, that ligature is also really stretched. You're wider than normal apart if you had time to step. There may be times when you don't have time to step. In that case, you can't even pivot that much. But if you can, every joint has to take its responsibility because your safety depends on it. This foot, I'm going to the right because it'll be the more important turn. This foot does not give up its authority. I'm saying all your authority is on this heel. But this foot doesn't do stuff like that. It has the ball of the foot there and has some kind of nice little authority because we're going to be continually twisting. We can't stay there. We have to get out of there right away. So we're learning that we're in a whole different game from 2 points of view. One, we've really tried to keep our hips between our feet as we defended ourselves. But now we don't. Now a foot takes off, lands on the ball, and twists like crazy to twist us. So if the hands didn't manage to catch what was coming in, you were still not there. That's the next spec. So take a look in the mirror and see how wide you are. So if somebody will take an ice pick, try to put it through your brain. See how wide you are. And as you do this, as slow as you want, see whether you would have not been where you were. You know, that where you measured yourself. Would you have been completely out of the way? Even if you didn't intercept or brush aside. Notice this foot does not give up its authority, even though you're clearly on this leg. You cannot be between the two. I mean, it won't do. You've got to get out of the way. You've got to get out of the way. Your movement has to be so sharp in terms of body angulation and space and distance that ideally you don't need your hands. Okay? So now the process is clear. And unlike previous groups of moves, this family of moves has us on one leg deliberately, on the surface off balance, but of course not at all, not at all. The hands here, in this narrow interpretation of the move, the hands have to brush things aside. Since we need all the speed in the world, we have to let the hand pull the rest of the body. Now, there are neurological problems here. It's easy enough for a while. After a while, it'll be easy enough to have the hand move with the body. Now, there's a visual thing that you've got to get here, and it pops up a lot, so I guess you might fall victim to it. This thing is circular. What we've done up to now, what I've described, is a circle. Depending on the whole situation, you may have used the move to increase the circle between you and enemy, if you're enemy. You use the move to increase the circle defensively. And you may have used the move, I meant to increase. And you may have used the move to decrease the circle, either defensively or to attack. But Couds trailing, exactly like the beach ball family, is a circular concept from which we attack in line or often retreat in line. So Couds is a circle. Nothing very mysterious. The whole body turned. The foot cranked. Everything cranked in a circle. But the hand, the pivotal hand that will probably save your life, does not move in a circle. Not at all. Now let's take for a moment a situation where it does move in a circle, so that we can then sharpen our sense of it not doing that. If I were felt that I had a millisecond that put me ahead of a game, if I felt that for a moment whatever I've done has given me somebody with his brain not working that moment, I might do this move, Couds trailing, in order to softly drift into his weapon hand and grab the hand and wrist. If it's a non-cutting weapon, I might use that moment to grab the lower part of the hammer or the baton or whatever he's working with. You see, so there are times at which, in fact, my hand would be in a circle as well as the body. Can you see? That's not true here. And its essence, the genius of the move, probably comes from the fact that everything is in the circle, but the hand is absolutely not. It cuts right through directly in the path of whatever is coming, defensively. So here we are, the hand which cannot afford anything except direct movement towards the attacking object. The hand cannot afford this. None of that. That's your death. The hand has to, the first movement of the hand has to be directly at an angle to whatever is coming at you. Your defocus has to be right on the money, because if it's an ice pick, you're going to have a nice, sharp, angle sense. Or a knife, or whatever, who cares? So, that has given folks a visual problem. You might want to spend some time on it, where you've got to get that sense of being completely circular. And you settle on that. You settle on this heel. You're not ending up this way. You're settling on that heel. And at the same time, your hand goes straight in a straight line at whatever angle it needs. I emphasize the face, but of course Now about this hand, there are many things here that are really different from what we concentrate on in the previous family of 20-odd moves that we've organized. The hand heel has to add an element of speed to this whole thing. The hand heel. So the hand heel leads and continues to be one of the things that you think of as being inelastic. I've spent a whole cassette on that feeling of being completely inelastic. Let me just repeat the feeling, because it must be built into this kind of move. You do the move thinking of being a sail that is being driven by the wind. So you do the move with that feeling of a wind driving you. Or your nervous system might enjoy more doing the move as if driving into the wind. Doing the move as if driving into the wind. Or, in fact, a strong current of water that is driving you. Or, in fact, you are driving into a current. That movement, which I've described as elastic, wind in sails, has to be very much part of this process. We hope it's part of all the moves that you have control of. You know by now that there will be many times when there won't be time for you to engage that element of elastic. And at that time, your non-elastic speed has to be just as fast as your elastic speed, which I hope you've been building up by that process. So there'll be a lot of times when, when stuff will just suddenly come at you and you will not be ready for it. And so you won't have that wonderful elastic feeling in everything you're doing. But it'll have to be just that fast, because by golly, our well-trained enemy, we assume, is that fast. So that same speed has to be without the elastic, but just as fast. That's one of those nightmares that you got into when you got into the martial arts, that the yin and the yang speeds have to be the same, even though for several tens of thousands of years, the species has developed that speed for the yang part of the movement, yang, and has completely atrophied the yin capabilities, especially as to speed. So this has, without the elastic, can't be at half speed to elastic aggressive movement, which it normally is. That's the degree to which we've atrophied this capability. No, we have to absolutely mobilize the elastic in the movement, and we have to absolutely mobilize the speed that we can slowly jam into our poor neuromuscular system without that elastic. Okay, I have a whole other tape doing that, but please always have that as a tool inside your movement. What that means is that the moment that this move starts, probably by the enemy, your hand heel is already starting that elastic and never quits, never quits. It's completely in phase as a separate speed tool, completely in phase with the rest of the move. It cannot do it by itself without the body moving, because you'll get hurt. I mean, it's in. It has to, and the hand, or if you will, the hand heel has to pull the body around. As we remember, we raised this in that final graduation of your left jab. It was bad enough when the jab had to precisely be in sync with foot slipping and body. Now you had the additional misery of having the jab take over the leadership some. Well, that's excellent preparation for this, where it's absolutely necessary. The hand starts the process, but must not wait for the body to catch up. The body's movements are more gross, and steps are grosser yet, so the hand has to just take off. The body has to do the best it can going with it. This has to be true all the way to kicks or other weapons to the groin. Certainly the belly, for heaven's sakes. And all the speed we can get. We've got to get a speed that cuts into other people's perceptions in order to really have that hand heel lead. And not only do the thing with the hand heel in front. I don't mean that. I don't mean do a hand heel and then go. I mean, as it goes, the hand heel develops its own stretching to lead the move. You're going to have to let the hand be floppy to get that slapping quality, only with the hand heel. You're going to have to let the hands go flop. There isn't any special. I don't want hands at various angles that will obscure the speed of that hand heel. So let's play with that first. If this kick coming down the pike was to my knee, then you can see where the hand would simply be down. I'm only doing the arm. I'm not really doing Couds trailing, but just getting you the arm part. But if it were a little bit higher, like something coming to the groin, or the belly, always the hand is totally floppy. In its most narrow interpretation, the speed has to be soft speed. We will try not to clank too much. So in the worst kind of scenario, with a weapon coming directly at us, it behooves us to get the speed where a person doesn't even know you're there yet. The speed comes with the softness. That's a little bit difficult, and that takes us into the jiu-jitsu part of it, because let's not kid ourselves. A lot of times, when you do this, you're going to have to grab the wrist or arm or hand or even weapon, if it's not a cutting weapon, that's just come at you. So if, for example, as happened in that parking lot to this poor student of mine, all of a sudden you look behind you, and there's a guy trying to seriously hit you on the head with a hammer handle. Now, this is not the clouds I've been giving you, but you're smart enough to understand that it's an adaptation of clouds. You're going down and going over. Whatever it is, you're going to have to grab that arm. Now, overwhelmingly, I believe you're going to have to grab that arm. To be sure, very often you're in the dude. You see what I mean? That once you've clipped that hand, you're in the dude, and it may well be that all you need to do is your countering move. Now, it's very important that even as you do this in slow-mo, you realize that you're going to go from a non-elastic movement, which has to have the speed of the elastic movement. In other words, you didn't expect this. It suddenly happened. It's just there. So you have a sequence of training here that's pretty definite. One, can you do any version of this, your favorite version for a while, with elastic, and see if that doesn't make the speed really, really impressive to you. So start with slow speed. Imagine that there's somebody who's going to stick something in your stomach. So at slow speed, you get that elastic as if it were a stretching exercise. This is a stretching exercise. And you stretch even more. But then you realize eventually that you're using that elastic in the long run, aside from the wonderful health implications, you're using it to save your life. Let's say, for instance, this is one of those times when I don't have that much of a choice. I mean, we are in clouds trailing, and we ain't in it for our health. I've been caught in a place where I can't go this way. If somebody coming at me right-handed, I don't even have the choice of drifting away from that weapon arm. Ideally, if I didn't have a problem with space, since the traffic is coming this way, or this way, from a right arm most of the time, it's certainly to my advantage to think of it as drifting away from that corridor. I've always felt it was incredibly naive of many of the, especially the Japanese-centered jiu-jitsu folks, the Chin-Na people sometimes, to always think that they're going to do their defense to the outside of somebody. You see, now if you're enemy, and you're coming at me, and you're going to try to stick something into my stomach with your right hand, and it's too late for me to play any other games, and the thing is now on its way. It's to my advantage, and I would instinctively work in this direction, away from your right arm. The naivete of many people in the game is that they think, and in the dojo they practice what they think. They think that they can defend so they themselves are on the outside. I've called that crossing the grain. Please pay attention to it in connection with clouds. It's very important that clouds include a real good sense of where to go. Now, we've worked with clouds with the big hero is the hand that moves across, as in Dragon. And here we have a good idea of how the Xing and Bakwa folks got together and began to synchronize each other's very clever ideas. But as in Dragon, we have the other arm here. In both cases, I could have easily not done that. Much of my jiu-jitsu training was with, with just one arm. I began to accede to this concept, which I like very much. Um, and I felt that it was a nice conservative insurance policy, because you really never know. And it's entirely possible that as you moved, the thing turned out to be a feint. And this arm isn't going to do shit. You see, so here you are. You have something going here. It was my feeling also that as the jiu-jitsuists and many of the Hapkido folks interpreted the move, it pretty much depended on something coming down the middle. Typical dojo-itis, dojo system sickness. It's assumed that the other guy is a berserker, which is another dangerous Eastern assumption. He blows his cool, and he, motherfucker. Okay. Yeah. But the move can't be that narrowly oriented, because he may also have felt this way. Motherfucker. That's just a little bit of an arc. Just a little bit of an arc. But now you better be very conservative in the way you see this process. Please don't see it as a move. See it as a process. It's to my advantage to not be going into the grain. If you were enemy and were pulling that, this is the way your whatever it is would be coming, you see. Yeah. And I've got to be able to expand the move, so in the process it doesn't matter. Because as I get away from the grain, as I take advantage of this movement, I have merely to get this arm out of the way in case it's a cutting weapon. Moreover, I may not be all of that courageous. If the guy makes the dim-witted mistake that the guy I just acted out did, if he's that stupid, he's dead anyway. But let's say that I flaked. I just flaked. It was suddenly on. And I can't be narrowing my perceptions down, so I'm trapping myself in moves that commit themselves. I've got to assume people have, some good sense. If I have to go against the grain, I'm going to be a whole lot more conservative, you see. And so you have to now overlearn this move, because it's to your advantage to be able to execute it, not only going sideways, as we just learned it, wow, but you may have to go backward a lot. That still makes it Couds trailing as a process. But you're going to have to stretch more than you hoped. You see, some of that blinding speed in the move comes from the fact that this is as far as you all have to go. Remember, overwhelmingly, if everything went right and this jerk really is coming down the pike, and it's right on, I only had to go this far. But if I'm going to be more conservative, might as well train to stretch a little more, especially the waist here. Even though you're ducking out and increasing, yes, those kind of things will happen. And well, they should, because it's good for you to be conservative there. Even more important is your training to tighten up the circle as your best defensive weapon. This will come up again as you have to, because this has to come up in connection with long weapons like canes and sticks and baseball bats and 2x4s and shovels. Shovel. Okay? So you're now, with this, what you're getting into your laundry now is the fact that you're going to have to tighten up circles in order to defend better. You see? So you're going to have to, here I go. This must sound horrible. Apologies. So if I'm going to go that way, you betcha I'm going to train in such a way as I do a real nice job, very conservatively. But my most important training, if I can possibly carry it off, is to tighten the circle defensively. Then I'm in. Then I don't care. I mean, then I don't have the knife because okay, so far so good. Now, this immediately brings into the game the fact that this is probably the best disarming vocabulary we own. I trust my sweeps with my legs to be pretty fast, and I can pretty much get things out of the road with the flat of my foot, you know, like arms and things, if they're holding still or not moving too decisively. But when it comes to disarming somebody who made the mistake of putting a pistol in my range or is holding it on me, we again are coming to Couds. Now we're really not joking. We weren't joking before, to be sure. But now it's obvious that the hand has to lead, and at the same time the body has to get out of the way. Okay? So this time it's no joke. I mean, you've paid the mugger your money, and it looks like he might blow your head off. And now, the business of the hand pulling the body and grabbing that hand. You have to do it many times with little toy pistols, so you can find out whether the guy would have shot without tagging you. As time goes on, it cleans up the process when you realize that the combination of elastic all the way from your feet to your hand heel, which is in the elastic, you know, the combination of the elastic, the overall movement, the perfectly synced movement with those rope-like joints, especially the waist, the spinning, so you're out of the way. All those things have to be pretty fast. Although folks' synapses are not, thank God, are not as fast as they think they are. You know, I would, anytime. Once you have the pistol, I think we're out of the orbit of this tape. But it doesn't take much brains to realize what you can do with the barrels of pistols when other people have their fingers in trigger guards. Same thing with knives. That once you get hands, knives can cut anybody, and stuff like that. That's really not my job. The job is to survive that one mini microsecond in which you have to be inside somebody else's perceptions. So when disarming in the front, think of, in general, we're not training for it yet, but realize that this move is that important vocabulary. You see. The other arm, if it becomes the hero, mostly functions in these circles. And now, I'm now with pistols over here, or here. I mean, let's put a pistol here. You see, here you are. The general process is the same, only this time the elbow better take the leadership. The elbow is in charge, and the body tries its best in full elastic to be as fast as that elbow. If the pistol is right there, you in that microsecond, it probably won't be that great for your ear, but his ear either. And then you've got the arm, you see. But it's a way to go. The synapse with elastic is way ahead of the synapse of somebody who feels pretty secure because he expects you to be paralyzed. And all you need is that microsecond. I am not saying do this. That's insane. That's back to that whole jujitsu-itis, dojo-itis that I keep yammering about. I'm saying that thinking of that will clean up this move. Oh boy, will it clean it up. You know, I mean, all you have to do is in your mind think of. So a lot of times you have to grab. Therefore, you're going to have to pick up that speed with, the grab has to, it's insane to do this and not think along jiu-jitsu terms. The grab, there is no time for. People always just have mouth faults open. The great weakness of the second-rate jiu-jitsuists is that they feel that they have time. You know, the block, grab, grab, block. You know, block, grab. Well, just as there isn't any time, let's say, for analogy, I were going to counter. You see where if I were dropping away from a punch this way, I might well feel that there is no time here. I haven't got time to come over here and then throw my hook. There might be good reason. The guy, several times now he's dropped uppercuts in that corridor. And I don't have time to go here, and then throw my hook. I've got to throw my hook with my body movement. In that same sense that's so obvious in boxing, it's not at all obvious in this weapon grabbing thing. That you have to, you cannot give one full pulse to the act of grabbing weapons, wrists, arms, hands. So the next move has to include the grab. And that's a little bit hair-raising at the beginning. Now, the harshest side of this move. At its harshest, we were not able to go back. We had to get serious speed out of the stretch, the pivot and everything. We've gone over it in detail. Now, taking this move to slightly easier situations, once you've put those terrible specs on your movement, once you've decided that you really have to be that good and you have to go for all those things we've asked for, then we can afford, with that instinctive way of doing it, we can certainly afford to take some easier ways of looking at the move. For example, I like to attack with this move. And let's say that we would normally step in, let's say. You are enemy, let's say we were going to grab. Formally, you might dance this as that, or you might dance it as that. In the ring, you would certainly think of it as stepping in, and if you were if you felt you could afford it, why you would step across. I like to turn that to the side, using this concept, using the idea of clouds. I like, instead of going in, I like to go here. I'll point to my feet in a minute and go through that whole process, so I end up on that leading heel. I still have all the specs, and I really twist. And what that gives me is a really strange optic, either for, in this case, for a grab. I'm going to be shorter than I think, and that's a strange thing. That is, let's say that you know exactly how long each of your left jabs are. Here, you're going to be surprised how much shorter it is. So often, this thing is nice as an optic, because it totally screws up people's perceptions. So, let me show you that from another angle before I point the camera at the feet. Can you see where instead of grabbing this way, or if I were, say, walking in, I begin to grab this way, or walking in. Now, what's implied here, before we look at feet, by the way, I like especially to get that kind of competence grabbing an arm. In this case, this would take me to a right arm, probably a weapon arm. I once, in a serious fighting situation, had to grab a left arm, which happened to be a weapon arm. But get this idea. What's implied here is something that you've had to do when you threw a long jab, and other times when you had to be in motion while you did something, either punch or grab or stab. Here, it's even more dramatic. Your eyes have to get used to attacking and themselves moving in some strange line that really has nothing to do with the attack. Normally you attack, you move with it. But here, our eyes are doing that. That. I mean, they're going boop. And of course this is all at, and so for the first time, you're very dramatically moving away from, at speed, at the speed of your grab, and it won't surprise you that it's at the speed of your punches you have to do this. So that's the first slightly less horrendous way of using Couds, where in the ring, for example, you get some on the street especially, this is an amazing kind of thing, because you're suddenly not where you are. In the ring, the American boxers, and I know that in Tokyo, the kickboxers, this is only used to finish. Somehow, this kind of stuff is only when you think you're finishing somebody. Tyson finishes that way. The great lightweight kickboxer Shima finished that way. I find that I can do better than just finish that way. For openers, I have to get a competence because I got to grab things. If it isn't a weapon arm, very often the other, I have to grab somebody's throat or the face or the hair, grab things. And it's nice to be able to do that with that angle. Secondly, if I'm going to hit or teaching somebody, then I like to limit myself to when I know what that right hand, the reason people restrict themselves to somebody who is finished, who's in trouble, is that they're worried about that right hand. I mean, if you were enemy and I were coming this way, I could get myself killed. I like to think of myself being able to feel that right hand out. I like to throw it when it's already committed, or I like to throw my own traffic in a corridor that I feel will intercept it. In other words, I don't feel that you as enemy, if you're that sharp, that you're sending uppercuts or overhand bolos or other very sophisticated stuff through my poor leading arm, then I should in fact not have done that. But normally, it's an amazing tool. It is short though. Don't practice it to finish things. You'll be much shorter. Your range is really short. The sweet thing, of course, as you know by now, because we've done that, everybody that I'm sending this to, is that it puts you in a very close with your other hand. And that hand comes right down the pike. So we have, well, here are the feet. What I wanted to show you was the way that you use the feet. When we were defending, it was vital that the foot helped us and the whole leg helped us get out of the way. Whether it was just pivoting or stepping and pivoting. Notice that this other foot had a certain role it played. It gave support a little bit. You couldn't be on it. It certainly didn't let you spin off. It couldn't do that much spinning for you because that might throw you too much. Anyway, now exactly that same process gets you something really nice. Imagine now, as you're looking at the feet, that I'm moving in to punch. If I had grabbed or punched straight ahead, as you know, I would have done this. But now I'm going to do this. And as I settle on that heel, that's my impact. That and the continuing twist of the whole skeleton, including the waist and the shoulders, that is the impact phase. So as let's say that we're grabbing, not punching for a moment. And here the hand leads. You won't be seeing the hand. The hand is leading. The hand is on its way and has grabbed. And by the same thing with hitting. The hand is on its way, impact and follow through, impact and follow through. And that lean and heel part is the totally unexpected part that gives the wonderful optic, the wonderful visual. Now, while we're down here, we're going to have to do this the other way too. And not only are we going to take a forward foot, so all you southpaws, practice, but we're also it's even more deceptive to go from a far foot, to use the far foot, and instead of coming in, as you may well have to, instead of coming in, we're going to go and come in on the side. And that takes a bit longer. Takes a bit longer, but it's just remarkable. There are wider angles. It's very dramatic. It's very dramatic. Now, this is strictly to attack. I don't want to get into that horrible habit where the dojo follower begins to think he's actually going to defend and step in. That whole Wing Chun thing, I'm not talking about, because it's a special talent. Okay? So, not only will we be working on this, but also on that. In each case, expect to be dramatically shorter than you hoped. That far hand may not arrive. That hand may not arrive, but in each case, it brings the other shoulder completely close to enemy, so that just the slightest pivot brings that punch into impact. Let me photograph the whole thing for just a minute and show you that. Okay? I reviewed the whole thing instead of just those oblique attacks. The process we're working from is that we're letting the hand, usually the hand that's coming across, pull us. It takes the leadership and in full elastic causes a complete twist so that even the ball of the foot and the body and the whole skeleton is twisted. Normally, we practice it on line. That is, if this is enemy, we practice it perpendicular. We have to keep perfect defocus, even though your own hand is flying by. If this hand is in leadership, it pulls the whole body in that same cranking way. The whole idea is to get more distance, faster. Normally, that line is a defensive one. Normally, this move is thought of and taught and passed on as a defensive move. I would probably work even more conservatively and work away from enemy, pivoting away for more defensive space, pivoting, and give this crossing arm even more of a job than the, and again, the hand has to take the leadership, and more specifically, the hand heel has to be part of the overall elastic. So at its most conservative, I would say we can probably practically be stepping away and still get such a twist that as we settle on this foot, as we settle on that heel, we've gotten some nice little distance. All the way from what I just did, and then probably the preferred and more difficult way of looking at defense would be to try to close the circle while there's traffic coming. So if you think you've got it going, and it behooves you now to practice that you go in slightly into enemy, slightly into, until eventually you're no longer in a place where you're defending yourself, and the movement now changes. Forgive me for this. The movement now changes, and you're using that same process. Your hand leads, and it cranks the whole body around in order to attack, either through grabbing or through a leading arm. If you are not grabbing, expect the leading arm to be short. Don't expect to throw the greatest left jab in the world that's going to have the perfect impact distance. Don't be shocked if the correct movement gives you a short move. Therefore, practice serious body pivots so you can either finish or get some other kind of business going. Serious body pivots. Even more dramatic, the idea then happens with your far foot, which at its most conservative would have you pivoting this way, usually defensively. And then in the context I just left, would have you doing something that really freaks people out, where you're coming at a very broad oblique, and your pivot creates the weird distances nobody can account for. Then what would probably be, if I'm right, your orphan hand will probably want to finish, coming straight down the pike. That's about it. Couds trailing in all its manifestations. I've orphaned the arm, the other arm, and its defensive uses are pretty obvious. Very anxious for you to have it come very high for weapons that are pointed at you, so you can wrap around them. But that's pretty much the move. Let's go on from here then, and put the whole idea together again. A key move that slowly you learn as a move and realize what its potential is, and eventually it begins to touch all your other moves. Where you would normally move forward, you would find yourself moving forward to the side. Where you would normally retreat, you'd find yourself retreating, even though there isn't a knife coming at you and nobody's bashing your head with a hammer. Speaking of which, you're going to have to dilute the essence of this move in order to get down. I think for your safety, if stuff is coming overhead, hammer handles, things that are liable to go whoom like a spring or a blackjack, it doesn't do to work with the beach ball things, the various beach ball ideas, which would have you doing this and here. That very often doesn't work. The force of the thing might hit you. And it's important that you sense that Couds may have to be done low. Now that dilutes it. There's no way you can crank it around and rubber band that thing. Woo! But it very often, I like very much this capability. So let's say you are a right-handed enemy, and you're coming at me with baton. I'm not in a position to now do a nice beach ball-y thing. Let's say I'm not. I'm an instinct. I can't do just a beach, or I can't do a snazzy jiu-jitsu thing. But I like the idea of the Couds capability, the sideways, and at the same time under. Well, that's not so great for your twist. So you have to make a compromise. Your foot's going to be a little bit freaked. It can't twist because you're down. Your waist isn't going to do as much, but I like that very much in your self-defense vocabulary. Low, low, low. As low as a compromised Couds will let you. That's pretty much it. Let me know what questions you have. Have fun with it. I chose the word realizing it was totally incomplete and didn't really convey what a good word should. The Easterners also are intensely aware of that important element in combative movement. They arrive at it through Taoist vocabulary. And so they talk about it as being qi, which is a force that we think of as an abstract force, the life force, a thing in general, but which I believe the Easterners think of as an actual force. And it's a very difficult thing for them to evoke. It's one of the important, this concept is one of the important reasons that the Chinese schools do form, because they really hope to mobilize that force. This is next door to what I'm trying to articulate and what this month's workout is about. Essentially, I like to translate it as a feeling of stretch throughout a movement. Let's say that all of you have thrown swings or hooks. And I think there it's easiest to articulate that feeling, that the moment that you start, you already have that feeling of stretch. It's in every joint, and it continues throughout the punch, and continues throughout the follow-through. I feel it mostly in the shoulder, in the hip, the groin, ligature, the feet, although you can't see them. And when that feeling of stretch, twistedness, elastic is finished, why, the punch is finished. Therefore, I would not think of myself as stretching up to here, and then from now on, not stretching, even though I might be trying to hit hard. So today's concept is that this stretchiness, elastic, has to be in the entire move, not just at an anticipated moment of impact, or moving, or any other point. It has to be in the entire move, and that often is difficult and calls for self-criticism. That's pretty much it. Let's get the workout started. You can certainly, it wouldn't hurt you to see if you can't get that stretch in any move where it's obvious, right? Like hooks. It's not so obvious in punches, I admit, and we'll talk about that. But to get that stretch and see whether you're getting a little bit of that stretch in feet, ankles, knees, as they all take part in. Okay, one more thing. I'll refer to this several times, because I need for you to check up on whether it's there. Um, Besides having a rubber band, a way of articulating it as a rubber band, which you tighten or don't tighten as you calibrate your feeling, or there are some other concentrations that really help. Let me not call them concentrations, just mental processes. Um, One is that you are being driven by a totally favorable wind, as if you were a sail. There's a complete, the forces hits you throughout. And that at speed. And that very often is a very good way to visualize this concept. Two, you are driving into a wind. You are driving into a wind throughout. Three, there's a wall of water that's driving you, and you're with that wall, inside that wall of water. And then finally, a body of water is coming against you, and you're driving against it. Those four ideas, and the idea of a rubber band, or any other elastic thing that you're twisting, that you're stretching, will do for what I'm trying to illustrate. Built into that is a very important centrifugal quality. Your hook is worthless unless it has that feeling of as being driven at the end of a clearly centrifugal swing. It would just be another punch, not that murderous thing that everybody is really scared of, unless it has that centrifugal quality, all of it, and centrifugal quality. That shouldn't be a mystery because all of you are athletes. You certainly have that quality in various ball sports. How could you not? I don't know about whether this element is articulated in skiing. It would be an interesting thing to translate to skiing. I wouldn't know how to translate it to skiing, that elastic. But anyway, in your own sport or sports, you certainly have many elements, and if not, watch a sail in the wind. That's the center of our workout, and I've chosen a few moves to really sharply illustrate it. Okay, here we go. Mat, and we're going to have to kick somebody, and we'll take advantage of that and make that assignment. Well, here we are. Let's just take one kick, okay? First of all, I need for you to get the feeling of where your authority is here. You are enemy, camera is enemy. You know, the back of the shoulder. I'm not that great for the elbow, but there are times when this is part of the game. And then you think of your feet as being your hands as being your feet, you see. And there's a whole, is your authority, where are you digging into the ground and pushing so you can begin to crank around. But we might be here, and this is where we usually practice. And we'll do it both ways. So think of that authority. That authority. You're getting all you can. You're digging into the mat with the ankle and with the side of the leg. You're digging in with one of the knee, well, not really, but you're certainly digging in with the hip and the back of the shoulder and probably the upper arm, maybe not. And with that, now one of the nice things you have, if you want it, is you can use the very foot that's kicking to push itself off. And that'll give you sort of a... And in the meantime, the body's trying to get ahead of it, because we need that elastic at the beginning. We need that elastic at the beginning. At the beginning. We need that feeling of stretch, of a rubber band stretched, and being able to calibrate that stretch. And in this case, since we're kicking and it's combat, really stretched, really going for pure speed. So you really want to get the elastic going at the beginning. I like to, at the very beginning, um, already get the feeling in the knee and the groin ligaments and the hip and the waist that I'm stretched, and there's a force driving me. Now, I don't know how you're going to, just think of a force driving you for a while. There's a wind, you're a sail, and there's a wind there, you see. And that stretches from the beginning and includes coming back. Play with that, to the knee, to the groin, to a face. Just play with that, so you can begin to feel what elastic you can mobilize. What elastic you can mobilize on both sides. Turn me off and play with that, okay? Okay. At that same angle, you're going to have to not only be able to snap upward, very low, usually halfway. If you don't have cowboy boots or heavy boots, you're going to have to work with the ball of the foot. And don't let that tighten, don't let that cut down the elastic. But additionally, we have to also learn, at this same angle, to learn to push, to not kick by snapping, swinging from the hip, but pushing, which means a gigantic tuck, big tuck, and then push. So the elastic now becomes more subtle. I can almost see you getting annoyed and saying I'm getting too obtuse. It has to start with the tuck. It has to start with the tuck. You see, we can't have the non-elastic here and then send that mule out. We can't have this. Non-elastic, non-elastic, non-elastic. Now we're going to lead with the heel. That's one of the reasons. And then we'll get into the elastic and send that mule out. That's one of the problems of this concept, and you have to solve it in order to get that kind of speed. Okay. A lot of times, the reason we get that speed is because we don't just have the elastic on the last leg of the movement, but throughout the movement. So if a movement goes north, east, south, the elastic continues that way. A hook, it doesn't just get elastic at the last moment, it starts a body movement. Anyway, we have the same thing here. So the elastic you have to get the feeling of being driven by a wind, that you're a sail. If you want different images to articulate the same thing, you are driving against the wind. It's another way to look at it. At speed, driving into a wind. All I can get for elastic here, if you want to know the truth, is in this general hip and groin area, but I want the feeling. You can also think of a wall of water just slamming, so that you have to make the move to just follow the immense rush, or you going against a bunch of water. But whatever it is, the elastic has to start here and just simply continue. So let's do it without elastic, but at speed. And now let's add the elastic. Anyway, work on it on both sides. Now we are tucking high and kicking with the whole body, sending out a mule. The elastic eventually has to, you start out with with just the kick itself having the elastic. Just start out with the easy way to go. Then add the recovery. And then add the other element. Okay? Would you now practice this without me in other directions? You need to be able to kick lengthwise, right? You need to be able to kick to snap and to not only an enemy there, you, the camera, or will outshift. You need to be able to work with this in this direction to enemy and need to test that elastic. And the other way around. You need to work in this direction. People give you, a lot of times, they give you their face. And all you need is a moment. So you need to test the elastic there with both legs. This is dangerous. I think both legs should be in this. That's about it. I'd like very much to see whether you can sense that strange zip force that you can get. If you add, we have that elastic in another aspect of the very thing we're doing. We sent a kick in this way. You were enemy. Now, we have to be in the same position, using the same movement. That very same movement gets you out of trouble. Instead of going in, you may well need to, or decide to go away from enemy with that same elastic. This time, that kick would be aimed at the ground. It would be the follow through, and you would have to use your arms additionally, almost punching. So you have a lot of momentum that can get you out of there and doesn't cost you too long a wasted split second. So you would be, you would take the ordinary movement and you have to try not to waste that second. And it's that would be interesting, wouldn't it? And about here, you're ready for your first shot. Okay. Next move to do the same thing to is going to be step and change lead. You know the move. You sort of walk. It's sort of that walk-out thing I keep babbling about. It's a shuffle. If you've done the dance, you've done it a whole lot of times. Body turns with the step, heel to toe step. You've done it. The arms are a fist on elbow, but gone the other way, where we think that where at times the arms have to go with the body. Here the arms run away from the body. They go where the body doesn't. That's all there is to the move. You've done it. So this is not, on the surface, a combative move. It's something you do in between real things. But we are now subjecting it to this whole business of elastic. Okay? There's one other thing, and I'll go over it again later. And this time, overwhelmingly, the move is for optic purposes. That is, you're not just moving. No, there's an optic thing here. And here, while we will learn to do it as that, still, this is not optic, because you're going to use the arms to defend. There's a kick coming at you. You knock some lunatic on his ass. And the moment he fell down, he tried to kick you in the groin or the inside of the knees. Good fighter, dangerous, trained fighter. So you were walking this way anyway to finish him. And by golly, you had to block that thing this way. If it had been, normally I suppose you would have gone here or gone there, but you have to block them. So let's take it from that point of view and see what we can do about elastic or very fast non-elastic movement. Let's first give it the elastic. All moves that are non-combative have to be at combat speed. Nothing is as dimple-minded as being at half speed here and then and then doing something at speed. So everything has to be in the general area of combative speed. So while this doesn't have to be as fast as your fastest left jab, still it has to be in that time range. So whatever you do from here, and we don't really know that yet, it might well be combative. I mean, it might well be something you feel like throwing. The move itself has to be at that speed. We've known that for a while, and our style assumes that burden, that whatever we do, everything is at punching speed. Body movement, foot movement, everything we do is in the general area of punching speed and seeks an evenness between what would be on the surface called the non-combative part of the movement and what would be called the combative. We try to have a complete evenness in the, I think in the best American tradition. I don't think the Easterners quite understand that yet. But in the best American tradition, everything is the same. And I really feel that. But now, additionally, we're asking that this thing be subject to elastic. And that makes it very interesting. That makes it very interesting. So first, the feet. We're assuming that we did pretty well. I mean, we knocked somebody down, and suddenly a kick comes at us, and our decision is that probably we wouldn't mind being, instead of just having our arms as an optic, it wouldn't hurt to start blocking things like that. So this is a good general prescription for that kind of traffic which can be blocked. I don't think the forearm is going to help you much, but the near arm has an important job. So sticking though to the lower body then, the feet have to do this, or that. The body has to shift. The job of the foot pushing us off is to shift us. It has to shift us, and we have to shift, and we have to calibrate that shift, because it's part of our illusion, we hope. It looks to me like in this particular case, it's not. It's rather getting away. Somebody's kicking. Oh, no! So it's probably just getting away from a kick. But we might as well teach the move now in its broader sense. Okay. Now, so the elastic has to be in that element of the move. Let's do that first. The moment that I even think of the move, I try to create that elastic. Well, I feel it very much between the ball of the foot, and the rest of those bones. My heel is off the ground to get that elastic. Yes. And then I feel it in a certain angulation of that ankle, of those ankle bones. I absolutely try to create that feeling torquing at the knee, and I already like to get a little bit of that feeling in the hip architecture. But as the other foot takes off, it also can create a little bit of that elastic. It could come from this hip joinery, and the fact that your body has to really move around at these speeds. And And there could be a little bit of an elastic, the knee could point a little bit, minor, but still important. And the ankle and the foot can already be thrusting in that direction. Now, of the several ways that let me give you several ways to articulate this, and then let's go down again and see whether we can at least get the lower body to obey, and the trunk to obey that concept of maximum elastic. Let's first, though, do it without any elastic, but working up to speed. Okay? That was a little bit of, but I'm trying to get speed and not get any of that with elastic into it, so we can begin to calibrate that. Okay. Let's try these. First, you are being driven. This is the first concentration, to create that feeling of elastic. You're being driven by a wind in the way that a sail is. A wind is driving you. A wind is driving you. That would be the first concentration. The second concentration would be you are driving into a wind. Rather than a wind driving you, you're driving into the wind at speed. The third concentration would be that a body of water is like a massive tide or a river is going boom and shoving you in that direction. And of course the fourth is that this tide is coming against you and you're going against it. In each case we're trying to get that rubber band feeling, that corkscrew and rubber band feeling. And there's nothing wrong with thinking of it that way. The elastic as literally being something that is really elastic. And you become a rubber band, and you can decide how taut you're going to be as a rubber band or not. Interesting to try to work at speed without that elastic once you get the feeling of the elastic. Anyway, those are the concentrations. I usually suggest folks do all 4 or 5, now we have a rubber band, all 5, and sort of see which one seems to do the best job of that unmistakable feeling when the joints are stretched like a rope in its most centrifugal, and yet the whole body is together with a certain kind of unmistakable leverage. Now that we're on our feet, the elastic has to also include the beginning of it. You understand? That is, the feet have to dig into the ground. For us to move this way, the feet have to push us that way. It's a very important part of the elastic, that the feet push us, the relevant feet. In this case, this ball of the foot and this whole foot, it would, for a split second before it takes off. Okay? Let's play with those concentrations. Here, we expand our sensitivity in this direction because we now have a move that could have 2 purposes. Essentially, the move was to teach a perfect optic. It was between combative moves. Whatever else had happened, you deliberately, and you've seen that whole style. But it turns out that we have, it's one of our favorite moves, and we suddenly find some lunatic that we managed to knock on his ass, and by golly, he's going to try to kick us in the knee or the groin. And we're in motion anyway, and so now we really do have to have that elastic for the speed, and that elastic can't only be in what you've just practiced, but also has to be in the arms. So let's completely unload. Let's do it without the elastic, right? Boom. Very slowly first. easy enough. Even at moving towards speed, without the elastic, right? Well, so. And now beginning to slowly calibrate so that we're completely. And now there's a very important thing here. What I need for you to sense is that the elastic cannot start when we're on the last of the three directions. A lot of times, both with the arms and with the body, we're going to have to start the elastic as part of a general circle or spiral or oval. Those shapes in our moves aid that feeling if you sense that there is a centrifugal aspect to what we're trying to get. So, it's important that you feel that elastic start very, very early. As I feel the move, I already like to feel, as I feel the move, I like to feel it, okay, this is important, in my foot. I'm sorry, sorry the camera angle doesn't give the foot, but I like to feel it. I like to feel that the bones of the feet already stretched downward against the absolute authority of the ball of the foot. The heel is off the ground, stretching the ankle. At the beginning, the knee hasn't got much of it yet, and I should have more in my hip and my, at this very, very beginning of such a move, but my shoulder has to feel it, and I feel, my elbow, I feel, has to get a sense of that elastic. Does that help? At the very beginning, I'm inelastic. Now, it's not mysterious to carry that through to but it's important that we carry it through this way, all the way through, or we won't have that kind of speed that makes it fairly safe to have some crazy that'll kick your balls in. You see. And you may, now what about the orphan arm? Well, that depends on how you feel about it. Because it also has to give part of that speed. The arm that doesn't seem to be so important. Most likely it ain't going to get much done. Now the corridor makes no difference, but I suppose that this thing should be adapted to see if we can maintain that elastic as we descend downstairs. So it has to be taken down lower. I'm especially anxious for you to see that thing as it whooshes the shoulder and the waist. Anyway, have fun with it. Back to the lunatic on the mat. Just go once more through this whole business. As therapy, as movement, without the elastic, just pure therapy, smooth movement. And then, if you would, also at this angle to enemy, right? So we have as movement, and also that push. And at this angle to enemy, we can't push, we have to do it. So you're doing that, you're going back over that. And then of course we have to sense that very often by spinning around, we can turn that whole elastic into an escape, you see, where we're on 4 points, and then we can pretty much operate from there. That's review. Here we go. This guy has just fired, and now he sends in an arm right after that leg. So we have to think of absolute elastic here, and as the leg relaxes at the same speed and unloads, that load has to be taken over by the arm. So as one unloads, so it isn't really an unloading. You stretch to, you get that power to the utmost, and then as you pull back, trying to stay as fast as the movement out, that provides the kick to create the elastic for your for the next move. In this case, an arm on the same side. So let's do it without elastic first. Slowly first. See, I'm ready to play in case things went well. I can pull myself up. In case I grab somebody, in case I get something to grab, I can pull myself up on it, then punch. But we're not going that far, right? We need the elastic for this and the next move. Okay, let's play with that. There wouldn't seem to be much authority there, would there? I mean, you're on your, I mean, look where you are. But there is. There you feel a real snap. Or if you're grabbing, and remember, it's very important to grab here. So if you're grabbing, you have to also subject that grab to that elastic, right? You have to have that feeling of just boink, of being, well, I've gone into it a million times. See if you can do that on the mat. It won't kill us to do that at other angles, right? Important other defensive angles. Let's say you are enemy and the kick is at this angle, straight down the line. Then the authority simply has to come from this hand and that palm. And that's enough. That's enough roots to send through you and send a nice punch out, you know. So you have to get the elastic for your leg and then send that out. You see? Begin to get into the habit of this kind of thing. Let's go with the jiu-jitsuist for a while. This kind of quite close to the groin. So in case you're on your way up, you get maximum early leverage from this, and you have a maximum use of the leg. On the other hand, if enemy is there, then the punch, of course, is got a whole other elastic. But it's unmistakable as it drives through you. Okay? Whole other side of what we've been working on. We've been training the person who's just been knocked on the ground, or is on the ground, to kick and punch, and we've got enough attention paid to the elastic, so by golly, the kick and the punch have that. Boom, somehow. They have that elastic throughout. And we've trained the other person also, and when that kick comes, there is a real strong, fast movement which has that quality also. Now, we have to think of another element. We've just defended against that lunatic who's trying to kick us, and suddenly he either punches or grabs for our balls. And we have to drift this way. So here, we've learned that if we have any kind of warning, we can mobilize that elastic. Huh? But now, immediately, comes another attack. And to be realistic, we have to admit that this defensive movement will have to probably be without the elastic. And using the Far Eastern terminology with its Taoist word traps, semantic traps, we have to think of this as being yin and not having that elastic, because it's just not possible. You can't have that elastic when you just in that first split second of improvising, of suddenly having things change. And just as it was immensely important for you to have that in your movement, so is it important to have exquisite movement without that, without at least the, of course it's going to be in it because it'll be what everything you do, but to have that speed which you need. The guy's punching or grabbing. I mean, you got to get him. So let's see, for openers, if we put that elastic into this move, what kind of speed we would get. Let's see, we knew what the guy was going to do. Ha ha. And we knew that after he kicked, he was damn well going to punch. So we're all set. And we have then, well, really, it's not that big a deal. But what if we didn't? Then we would have, and I need for you to see whether the speed of that move is one that matches the speed of the aggressive move, right? So we have, holy shit. And you've got to anticipate having many of your important life-saving moves have a certain quality that has that inner, more subtle elastic. If I'm getting too obtuse, I apologize. But it's there. I mean, it's staring me in the face. But you have to be able to have that speed without that immense centrifugal, every joint beautifully, evenly, tightly stretched just a touch, as for perfect leverage. That isn't always there. It cannot be in all your movement. And I suspect we don't want it to be, because there's a whole other element of serious, of another kind of softness, in which that elastic quality is certainly understated. This is a wonderful example to do that. Put yourself, I mean, if you like, concentrate. Close your eyes and visualize this thing. You've got a lunatic on your hands. Thank God you didn't have too much trouble stepping in, hitting him and knocking him on his ass. And here he comes. Beautifully executed kick. But you saw it. He telegraphed it for just a minute, and you did a really fairly decent job of whacking that thing to the side, and there comes an arm way ahead of your capability, a millisecond ahead of your capability of having, of just going the way you would like your elastic quality to exist inside all your movement. So I need for you to be able to change that, to have another kind of elastic. I suspect a skier's elastic, a more passive thing in your movement. Anyway, play with that on both sides. It's not unimportant, because people will try to kick you twice and stuff. See, and if you're sick and tired of defending against somebody low, let's go upstairs and imagine that somebody is higher, and we have to block here, and then by golly, there's some more traffic. Okay? Interesting assignment, huh? Okay. Um, I'm sure you've got the basic concept by now, so a few other additional ideas and exercises, and then we'll close up shop. Um, I'd like you to do a figure eight. I'd like you to see a problem that would come up. Here's figure eight, right? You can see it with a weapon. You can see it as, I mean, any number of things. You've done it before. What if we put that elastic in throughout the figure? A whole muscular thing begins to happen to us that I'd like you to sense. So I'll do it with you. Starting first, just for looseness. Now, let's put the elastic in. Especially, it would have to include the feet, but you can see where the shoulder has to continually be pulling backward or forward, you see? Better do the other hand, figure eight. I mean, with Couds trailing, we get to some very important applications of this concept. Here, usually we're at its narrowest. As you know, Couds is usually a very dangerous situation where stuff is coming down the pike. And we need every bit of speed and zing that we can get out of the move. So now I'd like you to become aware of two places from which we will be torquing. Torque. One will be the feet. They really do just explode in their job. So the feet snapping. I'll point the camera there in a minute. And then additionally, the hand taking off. The hand simply takes off and creates another line of torque or elastic. So the feet actually just snap into that elastic. They can't just be going fast. And the hand can't just be with the body, which would be good, you know, a good principle, but it has to be more than that. It has to actually begin to get a pull going the other way. So that's worth your time. So let's first, the element would have you be conscious of the fact that the hand must itself lead. It can't just become the perfect part of the body, which has been fine. But it has to also learn to get another millisecond in where even though the feet are just snapping into that explosive thing and the whole body is snapping around, the hands themselves have to create their own elastic. In this case, let's see, there's a blade coming for our eyes. It's probably okay that the hand went with the rest of the with the body and the legs, right? But it would be nice if the hand took a little bit more leadership and pulled its own elastic. That I'm anxious for you to get. The hand itself creating this line of elastic, this line of stretch. So it is taking off like a magnet, almost trying to take leadership away from the body, which is going as fast as it can, just exploding. So there are two lines of elastic here. In that same move, the other arm, which we usually think of as not being the important one actually has that same job. It also, but usually both halves of the brain can't do that. That is, if we hand this job, if we hand that job of leadership to this hand, we might lose a little bit of time if it has to catch up to the orphan hand. But the orphan hand certainly can take that leadership. That becomes important also when you're attacking, where for a while it's plenty good to have the arm right there, you know, as the elastic zips through your, you know, from your feet and into your leg and hip architecture, and then the body snaps around. It's perfectly fine to have the hand just keeping up. But then it's nice to have the hand once more, even in the face of all that, try to take the leadership of the move and establish its own elastic. That's a sort of an interesting thing. We certainly have to have it in Couds' trailing kind of defensive moves. Our life very often depends on that extra, almost invisible element of speed. Play with it. Well, it won't surprise you that the foot that's pushing me off has to absolutely explode into that torque, that really snap into that torque. The small bones of the feet, and it spins me, you know. It not only pushes me off flat, but it spins me. It has to help in spinning me, so that torque would be all the way from the small foot bones, the ankle, the knee, and certainly the hip, as it throws the body around and at speed. That at the very beginning, the other foot has to immediately pick up that feeling. That feeling has to snap into the other foot as it establishes that torque. And every joint has to really be part of that. Important to sense that. Also, how the body can get that at the hip joinery, and but the feet have to absolutely be in it, you know. Yeah. The same thing would be on movements that were less subtle, that if you really wanted that extra explosive, almost invisible speed, that far foot really stretches right into the back of the leg. There's a certain type of stretch that goes right like a current, instant current, right to the and also backward, you know. That current that takes the other foot to almost receive the stretch. It's the best I can do in explaining it. It's an important component of really fast combative movement. Well, that's a basic idea of what I like to do in this beginning training of the elastic element in your movement. We'll kick it upstairs in a few directions after you've gotten through with this, and showed me, if possible on video or in describing yourself, whether you've gotten that and where you get it right. I very much like you to sense the centrifugal aspect of it. I like you to sense that in punches, it has to be there throughout. If it is, you become very, very scary if it's there throughout, from the beginning through. In everything, it can be there if you have just a millisecond. Movement without that elastic must be just as fast as with. And it's the speed you're forcing yourself into with the elastic that gives you a chance to move without the elastic very, very quickly, because real life will force you to. You will have thrown your perfect punch, and suddenly all you see is all kinds of traffic coming, you know, and your speed, your defensive speed, will have to be honed, realizing that often have to be unloaded movement. From loading to unloading, and the other way around will of course be things that we'll talk about in the next workout dealing with this concept, with this chapter, this group of assignments. Have a good time with it. Get in touch with me in case you have any questions. The move I want to take in depth today is Couds trailing. The snazzy name is Couds, trailing the wind. I guess the name comes from the fact that we have a strange relationship of body and arms. But more of that later. I'm anxious for you to understand that it's more a process than a move. More is involved than where we put arms, legs, and feet and how we turn the torso. We have a process here. In the dance that I put together to organize some of this information, this move, Couds trailing, comes after a series which we've been working on. Everything we've been doing, we've been rolling on our feet from heel to toe. We've been pivoting so as to have our hips between our feet. Authority was shared by two balls of feet, and there was a lot of. It was obvious. It was what we did in all our hitting and our dropping away and our dropping in. It's inherent in much of what we do. But now the process changes. And I want to go into those changes in great detail. This move is essentially the most important concept we have for defending our life. I'm really not sure whether whether I'm right about this. I've agonized over it. Do you actually take these moments that are critical in somebody's survival and assign them this move as one of the important tools? And I still feel after all this time, yes, if the move matures, if your movement matures, so it is in fact a process. We're dealing with a place where you can't avoid space disadvantages. You've got your back against the wall. These are corridors, bathrooms, stairways, real space problems. Situations in which you cannot take over the rhythm or control the distance. Knives are coming at you straight down the pike. Batons, sticks, knives, screwdrivers, ice picks are coming at you straight down the pike. Things might be coming at you, not down the pike, but this way, but they're always coming at you. The process has to include the ability to defend all the way from a kick low as well as high, and all those weapons. In its adaptation, now that's the central form of the move. It seems to me it behooves me to start with that, keeping in mind that the process that we're putting ourselves through has to end up giving us a really interesting tool against serious attack on us. Let's start with that. You hope that you don't have to be into somebody squarely, but for purposes of training and to get to the center of this move concept, we're going to face somebody squarely. We're not on the oblique like we like to be. We're not up and down. And traffic dangerous traffic is actually coming at us. Where up to now, with our feet, we have gone heel to toe. So up to now, we've done this. So up to now in our training, if there were traffic coming, we would do, we would do stuff like this. In this general way, we've talked about it a million times, of rolling heel to toe, or if we were using, or if we were darting, it really doesn't matter. But now something entirely new happens, folks. We go to the side, to the ball of the foot, not the toe, not the heel to roll onto the rest of the foot. We go to the side with the ball of the foot and instantly crank the ball around, the foot around to an absolute max. All this time, we're sinking down on that heel, but we haven't sunk down on it until we have, within our time limits, cranked that poor ankle around to the max. We're now flat on this heel, and that heel has absolute authority. That heel is responsible for our balance. We crank then also, as a deliberate stretch, the knee. We certainly are cranking this part of the hip architecture, and the ligature and tendons in the groin. Now, the reason that we are not falling on our ass is because this is not the concept of the move. This is the waist, by just relaxing and letting us twist, does put us on one foot, but not over that foot. We're on it, not over it. The foot we've just let, the foot that pushed us, really has to push us. We really have to be inelastic. So it will, it'll push us with, and spin us at the same time. And here again, that ligature is also really stretched. You're wider than normal apart if you had time to step. There may be times when you don't have time to step. In that case, you can't even pivot that much. But if you can, every joint has to take its responsibility because your safety depends on it. This foot, I'm going to the right because it'll be the more important turn. This foot does not give up its authority. I'm saying all your authority is on this heel. But this foot doesn't do stuff like that. It has the ball of the foot there and has some kind of nice little authority because we're going to be continually twisting. We can't stay there, or we have to get out of there right away. So we're learning that we're in a whole different game from 2 points of view. One, we've really tried to keep our hips between our feet as we defended ourselves. But now we don't. Now a foot takes off, lands on the ball, and twists like crazy to twist us. So if the hands didn't manage to catch what was coming in, you were still not there. That's the next spec. So take a look in the mirror and see how wide you are. So if somebody will take an ice pick, try to put it through your brain. See how wide you are. And as you do this, as slow as you want, see whether you would have not been where you were. you know, that where you measured yourself, would you have been completely out of the way, even if you didn't intercept or brush aside? Notice this foot does not give up its authority, even though you're clearly on this leg. You cannot be between the two. I mean, it won't do. You've got to get out of the way. You've got to get out of the way. Your movement has to be so sharp in terms of body angulation and space and distance that ideally you don't need your hands. Okay? So now the process is clear. And unlike previous groups of moves, this family of moves has us on one leg deliberately, on the surface off balance, but of course not at all, not at all. The hands here, in this narrow interpretation of the move, the hands have to brush things aside. Since we need all the speed in the world, we have to let the hand pull the rest of the body. Now, there are neurological problems here. It's easy enough for a while. After a while, it'll be easy enough to have the hand move with the body. Now, there's a visual thing that you've got to get here, and it pops up a lot, so I guess you might fall victim to it. This thing is circular. What we've done up to now, what I've described, is a circle. Depending on the whole situation, you may have used the move to increase the circle between you and enemy, if you're enemy. You use the move to increase the circle defensively. And you may have used the move, I meant to increase, and you may have used the move to decrease the circle, either defensively or to attack. But Couds trailing, exactly like the beach ball family, is a circular concept from which we attack in line or often retreat in line. So Couds is a circle. Nothing very mysterious. The whole body turned, the foot cranked,